Perfect.
Welcome back to the Femcast, where I give my reaction videos over here on the Real Fem Sapien YouTube channel. Today we are going to be talking about how the feminist ideology can leave women vulnerable to elder abuse in old age, should they choose to believe the boss babe lie that is glaringly obvious. For some reason, when Chris Williamson and Jordan Peterson talk about this childless and singleness crisis of women, this reproductive crisis in women, they get a bunch of praise from the left. But when I talk about it, a woman who is doing it and doing it early by today's metrics, because a couple decades ago I'd be late to the party, but the fact that I am married, I am having a baby, I live a fulfilling life, that just seems to not be actual credit. So when we hear it from progressive men, that's okay. But if you hear it from a woman that's actually doing it, well, then, then it's not so okay. And I just think that the vitriol that I get sometimes doesn't make sense. You would think that the men who say the same things that I do would get it more from women, but that's not true. But hey, that's just kind of how cackling harpies are.
Yes, excellent.
So if you like this content, make sure you give it a big thumbs up, subscribe down below, and hit the notification bell. If you are returning to the platform, you have noticed that I have completed my baby tour. Yes, I am going to be having my first child this year at the end of spring. So I went and I did all the networking that I needed to do to build this platform. And along the way, I met some very interesting young women out there.
A lot of women suck at game. That's why your best bet is to just be pretty polite and sweet, and caring.
So let's talk about it. Teach us.
Like, I've been trying to teach you guys all night, and honestly, you guys have just been incredibly rude, like in many ways. Like, I'm not from Cali. I'm from the Midwest. I also come from a Latin background. Oh. I've been trying to be helpful. I prefaced all of this. I'm pregnant with a daughter. I care about women, right? But when I tell you guys things, it's always, well, my experience, or I know somebody like this, or this has been different for me. So, like, you want me to teach you guys, but you're not very receptive.
I understand. The question is just, then why are we on a podcast? I want you to have a master class. I'd listen to it. But if we're here to have a conversation, I'd like to add to the conversation. So
there's adding, and then there's being snarky. There's a big difference.
I think that's also something that you're guilty of as well. Would everyone agree with me here? Yeah. That Allie has also been snarky.
When you're being rude to me. Brian might not see it. Brian might not get it, but I can, because I'm a girl. Okay.
And so can I. And so can all of we. Yeah. And that's why I think there's obviously
there's been implications.
I was talking.
Okay. So you're talking over everybody else, and it feels like a lecture. You know what I mean?
Totally. So let's talk about it. Teach us.
You're here like pointing fingers, and it's like, go yourself.
Right.
You're gonna point fingers,
I've just been throwing out like numbers and stuff.
I know.
I just don't like it.
Back to my original statement. We're on a podcast. We're here to talk and share our experience and what we have to share. So let's talk about it. Teach us.
Interesting young women out there who seem to think that what I'm saying, I'm just pulling out of thin air. So we're going to take a look at a couple of concepts here, more particularly about elder abuse, but we'll take a look at a couple of stats that are out there because I don't know how much more wrong progressivists could be. If there are women that are childless and about 80% of them are saying they didn't intend to be, you might be wrong.
Is it your view that about 80% of women are childless due to life circumstances?
That's exactly my point. And there was a study done by Professor Rinska Kaiser, which was a meta-study, and that's the exact number he came up with.
If 45% of women between the ages of 25 and 44 are projected to be single per Morgan Stanley. You might be wrong.
A growing number of women are choosing not to have kids and as a result are advancing in their careers and using their wealth to buy property and travel more. This is an article by Bloomberg, I think, came out of their Business Week edition. Ashley Marraro isn't married and doesn't have kids, and she has a message for women just like her. You can still have it all. I love my life and feel very fulfilled, says Marraro, who froze her eggs in 2018 to keep her options open. The 43-year-old feels a deep sense of satisfaction from her job as a sales representative for a maker of medical devices, which brings her into contact with patients, and she relishes all of the lifestyle and financial freedoms that come with being a single, child-free woman in a well-paying job. Marraro, who was married for 4 years before getting divorced in 2008, enjoys an enviable degree of financial independence. The West Village resident owns her own apartment, she bought in 2019 for around $900,000 and then renovated. And in June, she closed on a summer home in New Jersey's Long Beach Island with her sister Christina, who's a few years older and also single with no kids. Ashley figures she's taken 10 trips in the last 12 months and often friends with a large group of about 25 people who are largely unmarried and don't have children. Those trips at 43 sound like they suck.
That's the modern mating crisis we find ourselves in.
If 50.1% of women in the UK are childless by age 30 at an unprecedented rate, you might be wrong.
You know, one of the facts that came up across every country we looked at was that women turning 30 without a child, if you're childless at 30, at most, you've got a 50% chance of ever becoming a mother. And that's maximum. It's actually lower than that in most countries. I could not find anywhere any examples. So it's a toss of a coin, turning 30 without a child.
If 6 in 10 American men are single and no longer looking, you might be wrong. So, you just believe what you guys want. The pick-me's, we're going to figure it out, regardless of the vitriol and regardless of the pushback, because there is a whole life out there outside of this computer screen. Let's take a look at my elder abuse article. It's going to be linked in the description down below. I no longer do free research, so if you would like my sources for that, it's going to be within the Substack, because why am I going to sit out here and bring all these citations just for people to tell me, you're wrong?
Let's talk about it. Teach us.
So this article is titled The Spinster to Elder Abuse Pipeline, because contrary to popular belief, you actually don't have all the time in the world to get a man. Believe it or not. Believe it or not. Shocking, I know. So there's more data and information out there that basically says if you haven't had a child by 30, you are projected to have a 50% chance of being a mom. And if you are unmarried as a woman by 35, it is unlikely that you will marry. This is not to speak on those individuals who get remarried. I am simply stating the likelihood that you will have a first marriage by the age of 35 goes down. You ladies watching, you might be the exception to the rule, and I totally wish that for you. I want nothing but love for women, but we have to get it out of our minds that we have forever to do it, okay? Because when you are setting habits for yourself and patterns for yourself in your 20s, that's going to influence your 30s. I know we like to think we've got all the time in the world to waste. However, father time has a different story. The choice to be single and childless for a growing demographic of Western women is incredibly short-sighted. In our world of Western comfort and luxuries that are taken for granted, we are unfamiliar with and in denial of mortality and aging. Despite this willful ignorance, Father Time waits for no one and ticks his clock behind us with every breath we take and every second that goes by. Young and now older women who falsely perceive themselves to be young walk through life in the West blissfully ignorant of how their decisions today will impact the later majority of their lives. This can sound daunting, but it does not have to be by default. An alternative lens of analysis to use on Father Time can be that his existence is as inspiring
as it is unsettling. It can serve as motivation and a reminder that we only have this one life to lead on Earth, and as such, we should make the best use of our days whenever possible. Of course, there will be down seasons to life that will impact your ability to pursue your humanity with vitality. But there will also be up seasons that serve as the seasons of the fondest memories you will hold onto for the rest of your life. While we must be mindful to live in the moment with the innovation of modern medicine, we also need to be forward projecting on how we set up our midlife and senior years to be lived vibrantly. As it stands right now, the life expectancy in the United States sits at 71.1 years old. Life expectancy is declining as new morbidities appear without medicine having yet caught up to them. Despite this, we must be mindful that medical technology will continue to advance in the coming decades, and many of us may live as long as 90 or more years. What does that mean for you? It means it's a long time to be alone. You might fall in love along the way. That is great. Exceptions to the rule are for exceptional people. I obviously recommend for you all to be exceptional people because at this point in time, the decline of the West, the she-cline, isn't going that great for the majority of us because social sciences have at least determined at the bare minimum that female happiness is tied to child rearing. We got that one, but for some reason, I'm just making these things up. When you decide to be single and childless, if you are that minority of women that does want that lifestyle, amazing, awesome. This video is not really for you. Claps all around. I highly recommend investing in your retirement and investing in your nieces and nephews. It can be done. You can have a matriarch in the family that is an aunt and not a grandmother. I have seen it in real life, personally myself. So if you do it and do it well, hats off to you. Share notes for the rest of the women out there who actually do want to be childless. However, it just seems like there's a lot of women saying they like being childless, and that's not what the research indicates. It sounds like a lot of cope, okay? This is not a societal pressure that's going on right now, clearly by the numbers. If there is a pressure, it's because we want to be moms. But I understand, who wants to be a mom to a child by a man that we're just not really that into? I empathize. I wouldn't want to be a mom for that guy either. But moving on, we take our health for granted as women. We take our cognition for granted. Women have a higher incidence of dementia and Alzheimer's in old age. So while you can understand life now, if you get to a point where you're not cognizant, you'll even make confabulations to interpret your reality because your mind is gone. Your body's on this earth, but your mind is gone. If your mind is gone, you need your people to be taking care of you and looking out for you, whether that's a husband or children. And like I said, you want to be childless, nieces and nephews, be involved. Adoption, that's another thing. I have seen women max out the momminess just by adopting a bunch of kids. I know women that have had 11 kids, 12 kids, 10 kids. These women will be cared for in old age. But that's the thing about it. You're going to need somebody there when you're not all with it. And that's just one aspect. But I can go through Alzheimer's by the numbers with you guys, as well as dementia when it comes to women. Women are more likely to experience Alzheimer's and dementia than men. About 2/3 of the afflicted living with Alzheimer's in the United States are women. In addition, women experience dementia at a rate of 2 to 1 in comparison to men. These are two diseases that are marked by neurological decline. We can see for sure through brain scans in regard to dementia that women's brain cells seem to die faster than male patients who have dementia. Why these things occur, I cannot tell you. I'm just here to give you guys the numbers. And if you are not cognizant and aware, that's what's going to leave you vulnerable to elder abuse. This is the problem with feminism and how it sells out women. Feminism does not cause elder abuse. Abusers cause elder abuse. Feminism just allows you to be more vulnerable if you believe the lies that don't match with your reality. Here's the other thing. When it comes to assisted living and nursing homes, God forbid you should have to go there, but there are some old folks out there that were just one fall away from ending up in a nursing home. Maybe they had to recover from surgery. We live in a very individualistic society. We don't live where their grandmas or moms or dads. We just don't have that. In Europe, in Italy, you can see that there are some cultures that still hold that, but this is the United States of America, and so things are a little bit different here. When you are in a nursing home, that is a predominantly female staff. Believe it or not, there are still sex differences in strength in old age. Men in old age seem to be able to retain more skeletal muscle mass in comparison to women. Women have a greater ability to touch their toes in comparison to men in old age, which is really neat. But if you think about it, think about your grandparents or think about an old neighborhood couple that you have. Who is doing the harder labor around the house when it comes to repairing things, doing yard work, or just anything strength-based? Typically the male. So if you are a malicious, sociopathic, meanie CNA and you have to choose a victim, you're probably going to choose a female victim to beat down on. Aside from that, women have a higher severity of osteoporosis. To be clear, it is possible that osteoporosis in men is not reported as much and not looked for as much. That part is true. However, we're thinking about low education, low paid caregivers in the nursing homes. We're talking about certified nursing assistants. It doesn't take much to be one. It doesn't take a whole lot to do, which is why they're not compensated as much. So if you are just caught with your pants down, you don't have any family to look out for you, you also don't have the funds to even afford to go to a nursing home because there will be homeless women. Video coming soon. If you don't have your people, anything can happen to you and nobody can advocate for you. And you might not even be aware that these things are going on because your mind could have left you. These are absolutely the worst case scenarios, but I will tell you about elder by the numbers in a moment here. In general, the elder statistics are as follows. As many as 1 in 3 older adults have been the victim of nursing home abuse. 2 in 3 staff members surveyed by the World Health Organization admitted to abusing or neglecting residents. 2 out of 3. You get me? That's a lot of people admitting their dirt, guys. Roughly 85% of assisted living facilities reported at least one case of abuse or neglect. Neglect basically means that you're not being fed, you're not being bathed, which is another form of abuse. There's just a little bit of a distinction with that one. According to NPR, 97% of nursing home abuse cases across 5 states were not reported to local law enforcement. I wonder why. Because you need advocacy. Hello? Elder abuse rates have increased during COVID. This is another unintended consequence of the lockdowns. Not even to get into the amount of people who passed away in these nursing homes without seeing loved ones. ABUSE of elder adults can cause severe injuries and long-term mental health issues. I think we got that one. So that is elder ABUSE by the numbers. Like I said, it's not that feminism causes it, but it is that it can make you a more vulnerable demographic. There are women who are lost in society. We do not see them, we do not notice them until they're hitting the news lines when they've been victimized by sometimes people that are repeat offenders in regard to ending human lives, and also people that are repeat offenders when it comes to things like EPAR. That is why vulnerable women are chosen. They're easier victims. Aggressors are not likely to choose someone that's going to put up a fight. They want a weak woman, and women are weaker physically in comparison to men. You gotta be the dumbest guy in the world. You're going to take on a man versus a chick, depending on what the goal of the crime even is. It's not unheard of that drug-addicted ex-workers are targeted by some very malicious people out there. So that same vulnerability concept can apply to an older woman who doesn't have anybody looking out for her best interest. And this is not to scare or frighten anybody. This is just to illustrate a reality. And you know what? Like, if it does scare you or frighten you, good. Maybe you need to plan better, okay? Being an independent woman sounds really great when you're young. Of course it does. There are a lot of really cool wives and moms that I know who did incredible things in their 20s. And I know that men in the comment section, you're thinking about the streets. No, I'm talking about these women going out, working on oil rigs, joining the military, going to law school. They did these things. They just didn't forget about the rest of their lives because college ends one day. Your 20s end one day. Are you prepared to pursue your 30s with everything in your advantage? Or are you prepared, if you are in your 30s and you're a woman watching this, are you prepared to get it in gear? Are you prepared to say, you know what, I made some mistakes, I had some bad habits, I want to make some new habits, I want to do it now, I want to be competitive? Because you can. You can. I have talked to so many different women throughout having this platform for the past 1.5 to 2 years that did the exception to the rule. But remember, that is for exceptional people. And if that's the path that you want to take, amazing, awesome. I hope you have the tools to do so. So that is my take on how feminism takes us from point A to point, if we choose to believe some of these things that don't actually match our hearts, match our goals. I just think it's really interesting when I say these points to young women. It sounds like I'm making it up. Granted, they might be ignorant. I think that this is just a testimony of the public education system. I don't know what's going on. Their brains are turning to mush. It's probably got something to do with TikTok as well, to where these kids are looking at a screen. They think that that's reality. I work in content creation. There's even some adults that do that, much older than myself. We need to put the phones down. We need to touch some grass. It's just odd. You know that ChrisWillx could talk about this. There could be female PhD academics that come out and say how feminism has been harmful to them. But when a younger woman knows the game, figured it out, and made the changes and tries to share insights, just the amount of contention about it, it's truly interesting. There's nothing nefarious about realizing the life path that you want as a woman, coming to certain conclusions, living certain life experiences, and trying to share this with other young women out there. There's nothing nefarious about that. I would argue that it's more nefarious to try to convince the overwhelming majority of women that they are the minority of women when it comes to femininity, when it comes to marriage, when it comes to children. That might be the worst agenda. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I will see you guys next time.
Go yourself.
So let's talk about it. Teach us.
Bye.